I'm Andrea Vasquez, PSC First Vice President. On August 26th, Cuny Rising Alliance and the Professional Staff Congress held a roundtable discussion about a new piece of legislation. Before we get to seeing the event, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the New Deal for Cuny. Even before the COVID crisis, despite Cuny's record of helping lift students out of poverty and of being an economic boon to the city and state, Cuny was a starved institution. The pandemic further exposed racialized austerity budgeting in higher ed and elsewhere, and now, due to COVID-19 and its economic fallout, our future looks even more grim. It's no accident that over the decades, as Cuny's Black and Brown student population has increased, public funding has decreased, greatly challenging students' ability to get what they need to graduate and succeed. To change this narrative, we must begin to boldly reimagine Cuny, and now is the perfect time. New Deal for Cuny legislation aims to transform city and state funding in order to keep Cuny accessible and to provide students with the quality education they need and deserve. These are the 5 elements of this New York State legislation that would be achieved over a 5-year period. 1. Free tuition. New Deal for Cuny mandates that undergraduate in-state tuition be eliminated and that the revenue be replaced by city, state, and federal funds. 2. Mental health counseling. As New York recovers from a period of crisis in which communities of color have been the hardest hit by both the pandemic and the accompanying economic depression, Cuny must raise the ratio of counselors to students from 2,700 to 1 to the nationally recommended 1,000 to 1. 3. Full-time faculty ratio and adjunct faculty compensation. Reaching a target of 65 full-time faculty to every 1,000 full-time equivalent students will require the hiring of 5,000 additional full-time faculty. New Deal for Cuny also closes the equity gap between full-time and part-time prorated salaries and calls for prioritizing the recruitment and retention of Black and Brown faculty. 4. Academic advisors. Cuny students succeed when they have sufficient academic supports in place. New Deal for Cuny mandates the nationally recommended ratio of 1 academic advisor to 600 students. 5. Infrastructure. The COVID crisis has exposed the extreme state of disrepair of Cuny buildings and highlighted the need for the capital budget to address issues of maintenance, health and safety, accessibility, and energy. As was true of the New Deal's response to the Great Depression, this moment demands a shift in priorities and programs. To propel this shift, we must wage a mass campaign for the funding of agencies and institutions that serve the public good. Cuny is one such institution. Join Cuny Rising Alliance and PSC in a broad campaign for a New Deal for Cuny. Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Vasquez, PSC First Vice President. Thank you for tuning in to this live, as you can see, roundtable discussion, Cuny Rising Alliance and the New Deal for Cuny. Before I hand off to Lucas Sanchez, who will facilitate, I want to say a word about today. The Professional Staff Congress is holding this 24-hour virtual action to culminate our summer of struggle and launch into an even more intense period of action as we all confront greater attacks on all things public. This summer, our union and the Cuny Rising Alliance joined in the fight for racial justice, education justice, and budget justice. We received support from scores of legislators, marched together, and held multi-borough caravans at Cuny headquarters and in Cuny communities. We fought Cuny's negligence on health and safety and waged a legal battle against Cuny for the nearly 3,000 layoffs of adjunct faculty. The education of hundreds of thousands of students of color was transformed and interrupted by COVID-19, but we will continue to build our power through coalition work. The PSC is proud to have the Alliance and their guests here to discuss our path and our vision forward. Thank you. Lucas.
Thank you, Andrea, for getting us started. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucas Sanchez. I am Deputy Director with New York Communities for Change, and it's great to be here with all of you. And it's great that we are continuing this 24-hour movement day on behalf of Cuny. So we are very excited to talk today about the Cuny Rising Alliance and the role that the Cuny Rising Alliance plays not only in the city but in the state of New York. We're going to have we have great guests, but before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to introduce themselves. All of our panelists have the opportunity to introduce themselves, as well as the elected officials that have graciously joined us today. So I am going to, just to make this easier, I am going to call on folks as they are on my screen. And if I could just ask you to just give your name, your title, and the organization or the district that you represent. So Luke, I'm going to start with you.
Lucas, I'm up.
Yes, you're up.
You're up,
Okay,
Luke.
great. Hi, everyone. Luke Elliott Negri with the Professional Staff Congress. Sorry, Lucas, tell me again, do you want me to talk about the legislation right now or just introduce myself?
No. We're doing introductions.
Sorry, Luke Elliott Negri with the Professional Staff Congress, the Executive Council, University-wide Officer. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Luke. And again, I'm just calling on folks as I see them on my screen. Andrea?
Well, I introduced myself, but thank you again. I'm the first vice president of the PSC.
Thank you. Jen?
I'm Jen Gavori. I'm the Hunter College acting chapter chair of the PSC Cuny and do a bunch of organizing work with Cuny Rising Alliance and other things. Thanks so much.
Your mic is off, Lucas.
Oh, here we are. Okay, next on my screen is Jamel.
Afternoon, happy Wednesday. Jamel Henderson, four-time graduate of the City University of New York, inaugural doctoral candidate at the Cadre Staten Island, and the Cuny Rising Alliance coordinator. Happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you. Senator Gunardis?
Hey everyone, Senator Andrew Gunardis here from the 22nd District down in Southern Brooklyn. I am a Hunter College alum as well as a former adjunct professor at Hunter.
Thank you, Senator.
And I share a birthday with Jamel. Very important.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Jackson?
Robert Jackson, State Senator in the 31st Senatorial District, 13 miles of Manhattan from Marble Hill down to Chelsea area. And I am on all three education committees in the New York State Senate, higher education, education, and New York City Department of Education. And I'm an education activist.
Thank you for joining us, Senator. Assemblyman Gottfried?
Hi, I'm Assemblyman Richard Gottfried. I represent Chelsea, Hell's Kitchen, a lot of Midtown, a little bit of the Upper West Side. I chair the Health Committee in the Assembly, and my father went to City College and my mother went to Hunter.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman. And we absolutely
also, my mother was a long time UFT member, so I've got union blood.
We love hearing those connections to CUNY. Tiffany?
Professional Staff Congress. I am the Legislative and Communications Associate, and I'm also a graduate of Queens College.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. Let's see. I know that we have some other legislators that will be joining us later, and when they join us, we will certainly give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Has Alithia joined us yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, great. So thanks everyone for introducing themselves, and we look forward to the conversation that we're going to have. So I want to talk about the Cuny Rising Alliance. CRA, the Cuny Rising Alliance, got its start in 2015, and it came together for a very simple reason, because we understand how important public higher education is in the city of New York and in the state of New York and nationally, right? It is, CUNY has served low-income communities, Black and Brown communities, and now more than ever, it is under attack and at risk of losing more of the resources that it needs to ensure that some of the most energetic and brilliant young minds that we have in the city, will not have access to quality, affordable public higher education. And CUNY Rising Alliance stands for this, believes in this, and is committed to working with all of you, all of our allies, all of our partners, and ensuring that CUNY has the resources that it absolutely needs to continue to serve our students. We have been joined, for folks that just joined, we had some brief introductions. So Senator Kaplan, I'm going to give you the opportunity just to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Anna Kaplan, New York State Senator for District 7. I have residents, constituents that actually go to many, many CUNY schools. I'm happy to be here with you and to hear from you.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us. And Alicia Rodriguez Rolon has also joined us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this event. Thank you.
And Giovanni. Giovanni, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this event. My name is Giovanni Piquant. I am the Vice Chair of Legislative Affairs for the University Student Senate.
Great. So without further ado, we're going to start our program. I will be introducing our speakers. Like Andrea said earlier, we really want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, and we want to make sure that we also have an opportunity to field questions from folks that are engaging with us today. So I am going to pass the mic to Jan Gaburi from the PSC, who will introduce our first speaker.
Hi. I am thrilled to be able to introduce today not only my friend Andrew Gottfried, but my own state senator here in Southern Brooklyn. I remember really clearly having a conversation with Andrew when he was still a candidate. And then shortly after his election, when he said the same thing, that he was going to make CUNY one of 3 priorities for him in his work. And to sort of say that it is for people who know and focus on legislative work, and especially for those of us who do advocacy work within the legislature, for someone to really say, this is going to be really one of my priorities and things I'm going to focus on, and is a real pleasure and is extremely important. We have a lot of stalwart supporters here on the call today, but if we had enough support from every single senator and assembly person who said that they loved CUNY, then we wouldn't be having and discussing the problems that we're having, we're going to talk about here today. One of the things that Andrew and I share is a real love of public things. And support of public things. And that's part of why we're here. I hope that in the future, I have a picture here of Roosevelt House at Hunter College behind us. And one of the things that we know is that a college, of Hunter College was built during the Great Depression. And at other stages in this campaign, I hope we are all together in person. And that one of the places we are either signing or celebrating this legislation is at the home of the Roosevelts, which is part of Hunter College. Andrew, thank you so much for being here and for your ongoing work, not only in this legislation, but in support of CUNY students and everything that you're doing.
Senator Gottfried, if I could interrupt you real briefly, I just have one more introduction to do. We have been joined by Assemblywoman Richardson. Assemblywoman, if you would like to introduce yourself, please. Assemblywoman, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay. Well, maybe we'll give her an opportunity. There she is. Nope, she's still unmuted. Mute. Okay. So Senator Gottfried, if you could go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Lucas, and thank you, Jen, for that introduction. It's great to see so many friendly faces on this call, and hello to everyone out there who's watching this really important conversation today. As I said, I am a proud graduate of the City University of New York at Hunter College, but my story with CUNY predates my graduation from this institution. My parents met at the Greek Club at Brooklyn College back in the 70s. So I would not be here physically were it not for CUNY, and were it not for Brooklyn College and for bringing my parents together. I'm also, as I mentioned, someone I've taught at CUNY, I've taught at Hunter. My brother went to Brooklyn College. So CUNY, in so many ways, runs through my blood. And it's fitting that we're here talking about a new deal for CUNY because, as Jen pointed out, so much of the foundation of this university system was created during the Great Depression, when we literally had a new deal for the country, to put the country back to work, to invest in the human capital of our people. And we built Brooklyn College, we built Hunter College, we expanded the university system. That's what we need to be doing now in this moment of crisis that we're facing. And we know this crisis that we're facing predates COVID. There's no doubt about that. And so we need to be committing ourselves to an ideal as to what we believe the role of a public university is in the 21st century. I believe that it is a fundamental part of everyone's public education. That is why I have introduced a constitutional amendment to make New York State the first state in the country to guarantee free, quality public education from pre-K all the way through post-secondary. Whether you go to a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution, or you get some type of post-secondary education. That is what a 21st century public education demands of us. And that's the type of standard that we should be holding ourselves to. Now, everyone's going to say, how are you going to pay for it? That's incredibly expensive. Things that are worth investing in oftentimes are incredibly expensive. And it's funny, just this morning I was scrolling through Instagram after I woke up and I saw one of these inspirational memes popped up on my feed, and it said, if you ask yourself how are you going to pay for it, or it's too expensive, you'll never accomplish those goals. What you have to ask yourself is, how are we going to reach these goals? So we know if we all commit ourselves to the idea that CUNY and the City University is something worth investing in so that it's free for everyone, and that we can have a world-class physical infrastructure with campuses that are the envy of the world, and we can have a faculty that is well-paid and highly credentialed, and we can have a student body that doesn't have to decide between buying textbooks or buying lunch. If that's the type of ideal that we are all going to commit ourselves to, then the question shouldn't be, or the statement shouldn't be, it's too expensive. The question should be, how are we going to pay for it? And I think one of the ways we can look at this is twofold. Number one, it's a substantive funding question. Number two, it's a matter of rhetoric. I appreciate how Jamel introduced himself and said that he is a 4-time graduate of the City University of New York. Because in my mind, I know we all love CUNY. To me, when I hear the word CUNY, CUNY is a government program that gets cut and that gets stuck with austerity politics. The City University is an institution that you can't turn your back on. The City University is an institution that's worth investing into, because you know that every dollar you invest in the City University will have a tremendous return on that investment, tenfold, if not more. And so I think one of the areas we need to look at when it comes to funding the City University and all the things I just outlined and more is we need to think about this through an economic development perspective. And instead of us trying to squabble over, crumbs at a budget table over whether we can increase funding 10 million here, 20 million there, this or that, let's look at funding for our public institutions of higher education as a matter of funding for economic development, because we know that, like I said, every dollar we put in will result in enormous economic benefits for our city and for our state. And so that's where I think we need to be pushing this conversation. I know that that's one of the elements that we're going to be talking about, not just today, but down the road, about leveraging economic development dollars to invest in all of the campuses that make up the world's greatest urban university, and that's the City University of New York. So I'm really happy to be a part of this effort with you all. There's a lot of work to be done. And I know we have some great legislative partners and some great advocacy partners who are part of this effort and part of this coalition, all in furtherance of this same goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Would like to point out that Jamel is working on his 5th CUNY degree as we speak.
He's showing us all up. It's okay. We get it.
Absolutely. And then I certainly appreciate you highlighting the economic engine that CUNY is for the city. And I think that's something that we absolutely have to continue to recognize. So thank you for that, Senator. And I also, just a bit of housekeeping, just want to remind you that Andrea Vasquez is going to be consistent with her timekeeping today. So just want to remind you all of that. So I now would like to pass the mic to Alicia Rodriguez Rolon, representing NYSET.
Hi, everyone. I neglected to say that I'm legislative director at NYSET when I was introduced earlier, so my apologies for that. But I'm actually glad I'm going after Senator Gottfried to talk about the Cuny New Deal. It's something that we are working closely with PSC and the Senator's office in developing. I also am an alum, Baruch, so I am extremely invested in this project for a number of reasons. And one of the great things I think about this proposal is that we are not only talking about accessibility, but making it meaningful, which is something that Barbara Bowen always says, making sure that our students have access to the most high quality education possible. So I look forward to working with everyone and partnering on this proposal and seeing it come to fruition. So thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I think I love the fact that you stressed your connection to Cuny. I think one of the themes of our conversation, anytime we talk about Cuny, is how much Cuny touches the lives of so many people in our city. So I'm honored to introduce Giovanni Piquant, who will raise her voice representing the students of Cuny. Giovanni?
Thank you, Lucas. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being on this call. I've met many of you all electeds before, colleagues. It's nice to see you here still in the fight with us. Today is actually the first day of class at Cuny, so I'm starting my junior year. But also, it's the first day of class, and we have a tuition hike that still has to be voted on. So essentially, if we do get a tuition hike this year, students will be finding out their tuition is going to go up in the middle of the semester. But I really want to talk about the New Deal for Cuny and what this means for us, especially in this time. As we know, Cuny is an institution that predominantly serves 80% Black and students of color. And Cuny was free once upon a time. And when more people who look like me started to enroll, that's when they decided, well, this is when we're going to put the price tag on it. And we know that what that does, when you put a price tag on education, rooms that give people access and opportunity for upward mobility, it eliminates people. The higher the price gets, it starts eliminating folks. And the New Deal for Cuny essentially is a new deal to relook at how we look at higher education at the City University of New York. What are we saying to the Black and Brown students who are coming here, who are making something out of nothing? These are folks, the average median household income is $30,000. How do we expect students to continuously go to college? The price of tuition is put on their backs. We hear the politics, the governor, the elephant in the room, the city and the state. But at the end of the day, we still have students who are on the line. We're facing an eviction crisis. We're facing housing crisis. We're facing food insecurity, mental health concerns. Students are starting a semester. Not all Cuny campuses have a food pantry. Not all Cuny campuses have proper infrastructure or ventilation circulation. And all of these concerns are the ones affecting Black and Brown students. When we say we want to move Cuny to a free and fully funded university, we're not saying just give us a sound education because it's free here, it's free, here you go. We need this to be fully funded with support services for students to help them not only embark and know that they have an opportunity and they have access to higher education, but how can they sustain themselves in higher education? And we need resources to help our students, such as tutoring, food insecurity, mental health, all of these services that helps one thrive. Because it's not just going to college and I'm just gonna go to class. We need people to support our students. We need more faculty who look like us. We need New York State and the legislature and elected officials to put higher education as a priority. And we have really great allies here who continue to fight endlessly. But I think what's important, like Lucas mentioned, is, and Senator Andrew Gottfried mentioned, is the rhetoric. How do we let New York City know that we cannot move past this time in history without investing in higher education, without saying that we're going to make this a priority? And I'm a junior. My grandmother has 9 kids. 8 of them have gone to Cuny multiple times. I'm a product of Cuny. My dad was an adjunct at Cuny a long time ago. I used to sit in the classrooms while he was teaching. So I know what Cuny has done, and I know what Cuny can do. And I'm here only because people believed in me and pushed me and inspired me to keep going. And I think every student deserves to have that hope and, you know, inspiration to keep going, no matter where they come from, no matter where they look. And that starts within our classrooms. That starts investing in Cuny and not just saying we're going to give you access to higher education, but we're going to make it harder for you to get in. We're going to cut the corners for you. We want students to have access and opportunity and to continue to thrive. So when we say we want Cuny to go back to a free institution, a fully funded institution, an institution that believes in us, an institution that knows that it's a part of New York City and a part of what we're doing here today. So I hope you all are strong champions of New Deal for Cuny, and we look forward to continue working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni, for your words. And if it's not inspiring to listen to Giovanni speak, I don't know what is. It's for students like Giovanni that we fight for. Giovanni, you're certainly a tremendous asset in when you speak and in terms of representing the student body. So thank you for your words. I would like now to introduce Luke Elliott Negri, representing the PSC.
Thanks so much, Lucas. I'm just going to speak very briefly about 1 or 2 aspects of the New Deal for Cuny legislation that we're proposing. One is around hiring additional academic advisors and mental health counselors at the City University of New York to reach national standards. So Cuny is far below their standards, and we need to hire the support so that students can make it through Cuny and make it through in a timely manner. And another piece of this legislation I want to speak about very briefly is hiring additional full-time faculty and also increasing the compensation of adjunct faculty. And to me, this is a very concrete example of how teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. I, for example, have written letters of recommendation for students who I taught on campuses that I have not been to for 3 years, haven't been on their payroll for 3 years. And I have written those letters of recommendation because I'm dedicated to those students. The same for students who, for example, have incompletes in their classrooms. I've graded papers a year or 2 after I've been off the payroll of a campus that I've taught on in the past. So there are many dedicated adjunct faculty at Cuny, many thousands of them. However, this is a broken model. We need ultimately fewer adjunct faculty, those committed adjunct faculty who've been on campuses, to be converted to full-time positions. And we need to hire full-time faculty who are there on campus consistently for decades so that they can be there for the students. I shouldn't have to be writing letters of recommendation for someone 3 years down the road, although I'm willing to do that. And so that is just one piece of the New Deal for Cuny legislation, but a very important one. And finally, I just want to say thank you to my own state senator, Anna Kaplan, for being on the call. Senator Kaplan, thank you so much for being here. I had to shout you out since it was my turn on the mic. And back to you, Lucas. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all the members and Cuny Rising affiliates and elected officials who are on the call.
Thank you, Luke. And I'm also a constituent of Senator Kaplan, so want to echo Luke's words. So we've also been joined by Assemblymember Yulene New. We're so happy to have you. Assemblymember, I want to give you the opportunity not only to introduce yourself, but I know that you have a tight schedule and you need to leave early. So wanted to give you the opportunity to both introduce yourself and hear your remarks.
Thank you so much for giving me just this short period of time to speak. I know that I have to, I'm so sorry that I have to actually jump to another event, but I just wanted to say that, we have to listen to our students. We have to listen to our faculty here. Yes, and NUF is in the house. I am a National Urban Fellow. I have to prep that because that makes me a Baruch Bearcat, and I love Cuny. I will say that I would not be here if it wasn't for my Cuny education. And I also wouldn't have had the opportunities if I wasn't able to be a part of the National Urban Fellows. I think that, we have seen how our state passed an austerity budget that severely cut funding to healthcare, housing, and education, and transportation. And so back when we were voting on the budget, I said it in my floor speech, and I'll say it again, that when we cut deeply into our school budgets, it means layoffs for our teachers, our educational professionals, and our kids need them more than ever. Our students need our professors more than ever. And I think that it's so important that we recognize that. Along with the pandemic and the austerity budget, the systemic racism that has long existed in our society has come to light in a major way after the horrible murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. But it also is showing the systemic racism in the funding towards CUNY. The majority of the students who go to our schools, our CUNY schools, are students of color. And I think that it's really important that we recognize that. And there are so many of us who had to work and do school at the same time because we couldn't afford to just go to school. I think it is so important that we are recognizing these things because CUNY has long provided education and opportunities for so many of us who have needed it and couldn't have possibly afforded it otherwise. And I think that, it's improper funding of CUNY is a part of that systemic racism that we are seeing throughout our society. CUNY has been the lifeblood of the city for so long because of the economic opportunities and the fact that we are we're literally the economic engine for our city and for our state and then for the country. And so I think that there's a lot of things there that we have to unpack. Like, what is it that makes it so that we're so crucial and critical and yet so underfunded, right? And I think that it's because there are choices that are being made which make it so that obviously we're not put as a priority. The budget cuts that CUNY already has faced after the budget was approved and it'll be hard work to get through in the next coming months and years. And we have to fight to ensure that our institutions like CUNY are given a fighting chance. I just wanted to say that for every single person who voted with us on the budget, which is voted no on the budget, there was a lot of reasons, and one of my reasons was the cuts to education and the cuts to healthcare, and I think that we have to listen when CUNY is asking for such basic help right now. We have to listen to this new deal. Sorry, there's my dog barking at the ambulance. So we have to make sure that we are actually, listening to our students when they speak, and we're listening to our faculty when they're speaking. Because, as you know, and by the way, I want to say thank you for asking for more full-time positions, because we know that a lot of our adjunct faculty can't make ends meet. And I talked to several of our adjunct faculty who have to file all the time for housing help. And it is difficult. It is difficult to see when a lot of our adjunct faculty are taking on full loads when they're asked to, and they still can't make ends meet, and they're not able to even provide for their own housing, and some are now homeless. I think that it's really, really critical that we are taking into consideration what this entire environment is now doing to folks. And so I wanted to say thank you for all of you making that ask.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. We certainly appreciate your words, and particularly appreciate that you brought up the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, because when we talk about CUNY and when we talk about the movement for Black Lives, we have to talk about the public higher education that serves communities of color. So I really want to appreciate your words. I would like now to introduce our next speaker, Tiffany Brown with the PSC.
The capital budget, but before I get into the capital budget, the fact that Assemblymember New brought up George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I would also like to mention that Akai Gurley was also a CUNY student, and he was killed, unfortunately, due to sanction violence. So we have to really look at that in context, that our students are meeting a variety of issues that are happening out in society, and they bring this to the CUNY campuses. And many of these campuses are overcrowded, dealing with breaking escalators. I'm a graduate from Queens College, and I've also have experience working as a student organizer at BMCC And, I had to do like trainings at Hunter College. And I remember when the escalator is broken and you have to march up all of those stairs to get to one classroom. Or even at Medgar College where, they had temporary trailers and now they're used as full-time classrooms. So these are the capital needs that we need to address. And we believe that the new deal for CUNY will address those needs, because if we're saying that Black and Brown students that are coming from the K-12 system that are also being met with a variety of issues there, now they're going into the CUNY system that we say is a great system that produced many people on this call right now as graduates. Why are we not funding their buildings? You could go online right now, you could look at Broken College and they'll have a variety of pictures of ceilings falling, leaking roofs, inadequate ventilation, and we are actively in a pandemic that is disproportionately impacting Black and Brown students that are going back to these communities. Many of these CUNY institutions are in Black and Brown communities. I went to Queens College. Palmanat Public Housing was right across the street. So if we're going to invest in CUNY, we can't think about it only as, academic advisors, professors, and faculty members. Yes, but how are we housing those faculty members? Are we protecting them? Do we make sure they have hot water? Do they have soap that they can adequately wash their hands? Again, we are in the middle of a pandemic. So the capital budget will definitely address those needs. And the overall budget will be, we're estimating it's $5.2 billion. And yes, that is a lot of money, but we also saw not too long ago how the state was more than willing to give, that amount of money to a powerful, company known as Amazon. So we know that that money does exist. And if we really are, wanting to invest in higher education, we need to work with our elected officials to produce that money, similar to what Andrew Gennard has said. So for the senior capital cost, it will come to $3.79 billion we're estimating, and for community colleges, it will be $1.41 billion. But just think about the overall investment that will do to the overall health of New York City and New York State that we know produces lawyers, doctors, teachers, professors, politicians. So we definitely need to invest in our CUNY capital budget to make sure that our students are safe, learning in healthy learning environments, and not having to deal with mold or leaking roofs while they're trying to take, their exam, but just make it through, the day-to-day of college. So thank you.
Tiffany, thank you so very much for your words. And I think you said so many important things, but I think one thing that I wanted to highlight is that partnership with elected officials, which is why it's so important that we're having this event, and which is why it's so important to us as a CUNY Rising Alliance to see the electeds that we have on as our supporters and our champions. So I wanted to adjust the agenda a little bit and introduce Assemblymember Diana Richardson. I know that you have a time constraint, so if you could please introduce yourself, Assemblymember, and we'd love to hear your remarks. Assemblywoman Richardson, I don't know if you're speaking, you're on mute. Okay, well, I guess while the Assemblywoman figures out that, I'm sure it's a tech issue, I wanted to go next to Jamel Henderson, the CUNY Rising Alliance coordinator.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you once again, those who are watching live at home on Facebook and on PSC. Thank you for being here with us. My comments and on the importance about this new deal is to talk about the racial justice. And the only way that I can do that is in the coined phrase that we at CUNY Rising have been taking and soaring with, which is the real CUNY experience. So let me put it to you this way, why this is important right now. Today is the first day of classes. We just found out once again in the Black community several days ago that James Blake has been shot and gunned down. Thankfully, he is still fighting for his life. There are CUNY students right now who are organizing and hitting the streets because they feel that in order for them to be successful this semester, they need to know that their lives matter and that they're safe. September 1st is literally 1 week from today. CUNY students and their families among the millions that are facing eviction right now in the city and state of New York. When they look at myself, Timothy, Giovanni, and many other Black and Brown and Asian student leaders, they do not see someone with the incredible accolades. They do not see the chairperson of the University Student Senate. They do not see the vice chair of legislative affairs. They do not see a 4-time CUNY graduate. They do not see someone who's pursuing their doctorate degree. They see Black bodies that is used for either a promotion or for peril. We're living in a time right now where CUNY is on the front lines. CUNY students, faculty, staff, alums are on the front lines fighting for injustices while realizing the urgent need for mental health support services. Our CUNY students have been quarantined over 180 days and counting. And the quarantine isn't going to end anytime soon. There are CUNY students who are in homes right now, in surrounding environments where there's gun violence that has intentionally been put into our communities because CUNY students, along with the city, fought to make sure that we finally pass the laws to hold law enforcement officers accountable. This legislation is something that is not going to be the final standpoint, but it is a great start to progressivism for the community and the greatest university in the world that drives the economic, political, and social forcements to making sure that we have the equality that we're looking for. So I'm coming to you unapologetically as a Black man who lives in public housing, who's pursuing his 5th degree and representing many people who look like me, whose voices may not be heard, and understanding that this legislation is a start of what's owed to Black and Brown communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamel, for your powerful words. I mean, I think CUNY, fighting for CUNY is racial justice for all the reasons that you and Tiffany and Giovanni have highlighted. So I really thank you for that. So I now wanted to go to some of our assembly members and senators that have joined us. And I would first like to introduce Assemblymember Gottfried.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You know, of all the industrial democracies on earth, the United States may well be the richest, but of all of those industrial democracies, we demand and get less from our government for working people. And the treatment of public higher education is a major example of that. Whether you're talking about higher education or transportation, and I was just seeing today the MTA announcing more potential service cuts and fare hikes, or healthcare or housing. We allow the wealth that could enable all working people in this country to advance and to be educated and housed and have healthcare. We allow that wealth to be kept away from the public sector. And it's critically important to people of color. It's critically important to everyone in New York who does not have extraordinary wealth. And so I'm excited to be part of a movement for a New Deal for CUNY because of what CUNY means to me and to my family and to our history as a family and what it means to my constituents and to the ability of people of color in New York and low-income people and all New Yorkers to move forward. When I was about 14 years old, and then Governor Rockefeller was proposing to impose tuition on the city colleges, And we're talking back now in 1961, when the city colleges would still have more than a decade of being tuition free. The first political demonstration I went to as an early teen was a demonstration to protest Rockefeller's plan to impose tuition on CUNY. We won that fight. We've got to win this fight. Thanks.
Thank you, Assemblymember Gottfried, for your words. I would now like to introduce Senator Jackson.
Hey, everyone. We need to act, and so I'm ready to work with Andrew about a constitutional amendment. We need to think about how can we raise the revenue. And so that's the type of action we need to do. I mean, this is all good because we're talking about it as to the reasons why. But anyone that lives in New York City or knows New York City, anything knows about CUNY and the thousands of layoff of adjunct professors, and based on the statistics that you gave in your draft, a new deal for CUNY, talk is talk, but we need to act. And so Andrew and Anna and everyone else, let's think about what can we do to raise the revenue in order to get things done. And that's what has to happen. So we need to galvanize all of the CUNY students, CUNY professors, and everyone else who believes that everyone deserves a good education from pre-K through college, so that we can have the most educated citizens of our state to carry out all of the duties and responsibilities of all of the positions that we can think of, from doctors, attorneys, from engineers, from social workers, from professors, all of you can think of. We need to be able to have an educated workforce to do that. So I'm ready to put our heads together and come up with solutions from a legislative point of view or constitutional amendments, so that we can, and obviously constitutional amendments, we have to, that's a longer process than just passing one bill. So I'm ready. I want to listen to the extent that I can in today's time frame, but after this is over, let's get busy.
Thank you, Senator. Absolutely. The CUNY Rising Alliance is about action, and I think your words are absolutely in point. We have to mobilize all the folks that are connected to CUNY to take action, and your words are certainly welcome. I would now like to give the opportunity to Senator Kaplan.
I already introduced myself. I want to, first of all, thank you for the organizers for this event. It's really important for all of us, the elected, to hear from you, to understand how important this issue is. We are dealing with a lot right now in the state of New York, not just state of New York, throughout the country. And we do have to make some difficult decisions as to what we need to do. I can promise you we're having those conversations in the Senate with my majority leader and my colleagues, and I will certainly share your sentiments with my colleagues. Thank you. Thank you again for allowing me to take part in this. And with that, I'm going to get off. I have to also get on another Zoom event. But thank you for including me.
Thank you, Senator Kaplan, and we certainly appreciate that. An elected official, right, representing the suburbs, representing Long Island, is supportive of this, because it's not only a city issue, right? We know that CUNY is an economic engine, not only for the city, but also for the state of New York. If CUNY does well, Long Island does well. So thank you, Senator Kaplan. We've had some connection issues with Assemblymember Richardson. However, we are lucky to have Tim Hunter, who will not only speak in his role as president of USS, but also on behalf of Assemblywoman Richardson. Tim?
So Lucas, thank you so much for having me. So usually, first off, greetings to everyone that's on the call. Usually when I'm on these calls, I'm speaking on behalf of USS and the University Student Senate and all the students in Cuny. But today I'm here on behalf of Assemblymember Richardson. Giovanni's here on behalf of USS. So thank you for being here. I just come to express the Assembly members' overwhelming support for the City University of New York. She's a two-time grad. She spent her life, working tirelessly to secure funding for school like Medgar Evers College, her alma mater, and other, CUNY campuses. And she's a huge advocate for public higher education and everything that it's done, for the community at large, especially the community that she represents in the 43rd District in Brooklyn. And personally, as my mom being a graduate of the same school, I know that the slogan "Medgar Forever" is something a lot of the alumni of Medgar hold dearly close to their heart, and CUNY always has the support of the Assembly Member's office, and if there's anything that you'll need, the Assembly Member will definitely make herself available. Unfortunately, right now she's at a community event. We're here holding down the fort at the office. So we're just, doing what we can to try to provide support. She's always been out there, a lot of food distributions. We had a very busy morning this morning as well. But, because of the technical difficulty she's had with turning her camera on and off and her being at the event, she just told me to speak on her behalf, but she is listening in. She hears what everyone's saying, and she's glad to see all of her colleagues here showing support for the greatest urban university in the world. So Lucas, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak. And if anybody has any other questions, comments, or concerns about USS, Giovanni could definitely take it. And, it's my pleasure to be here, as always, fighting for CUNY.
Great. Thank you, Tim, for your words on behalf of Assemblymember Richardson, and we certainly appreciate her support. So I'm so proud of us. We've done amazingly with our agenda and staying on time. Thank you, Andrea, for your timekeeping. So with the time that we have left, we would like to take questions from the audience. So folks that are listening, we would love to take your questions. Please put them into the chat, and we will address them as we get them. And this is an opportunity for folks to ask questions or comment to any of the things that you've heard from our elected officials or from our representatives from the PSC, NYCC, the CUNY Rising Alliance, and NYSIT. So as we get questions, also from the press, we also welcome questions from the press as well. We're very lucky to have reps from the press. If any questions are coming in, I will certainly direct them to the appropriate person. So in the meantime, as we wait for the questions to come in, I wanted to pose this question to our legislators. What do you think we as the CUNY Rising Alliance need to be doing so that we see what Senator Jackson alluded to, right? We've heard a lot of positive words from a lot of folks that say they're in support of CUNY, but we haven't seen that action. So what could we be doing as CRA, as the CUNY Rising Alliance, to get more of your colleagues in the Assembly and in the Senate to support the New Deal for CUNY? Senator Gottfried, I saw your hand raised.
Sure. I think there's a lot that can be done. I'll share with you one idea that I have shared, I think, with several people on this call, but I think it's important that everyone hears this. I think the movement on the scale that we're talking about is obviously a lot larger than just a handful of students and a handful of faculty and some organizers on a video call. You know, we've all gotten to know each other really well doing this for the last 2 years since I've been in office, and that's great that we built a lot of momentum behind this. But we need to expand this coalition so that every single student and every single alumni of the university is making phone calls to their state assembly members, is making phone calls to their state senators. We need to make sure that every single donor to the university and all of its related organizations and charities and nonprofits and foundations are all calling their assembly members and their senators and the governor's office. Like, this has to be such a widespread coalition building effort. And I know that the Alliance is working on these things. So this is not a critical statement. It's also, it's a lot of hard work it takes to organize at this level. But I think the way that we're going to get everyone moving from just saying, oh, I love CUNY, to I need to do this for CUNY, the city university. Sorry, caught myself. We need to be hearing from more voices that are impacted by the positive impact that the university has on them, whether they are students or they were students or they hire students or any stakeholder in the system. We need to be hearing from a lot more voices.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Jackson, you had your hand up raised. And I also, related to this, someone from the audience asked, what would you like the community to do in support of CUNY? So Senator Jackson, if you could address the first question as well as this one, which I think is related.
Sure. I agree with Andrew as far as if we look at Andrew's bill, if you have a bill, I'm going to look at that. Constitutional amendment, we know that it's not just passing the bill now, but it's passing it now this session and next session, and then it goes to the vote of the people. But I think it clearly can be done if we continue to organize. So all of the activists, if there's a bill, we need to ask every elected public official at the state level and the local level and the federal level, do you support this constitutional amendment so that New York become the CUNY, is that CUNY and SUNY both, Andrew, that we will have free college for everyone. And if you support that, we ask you to sign on to the bill. If they don't sign on to it, let me get back to you. Okay, so when are you going to get back to us? You're going to get back to me in a week, 2 weeks? Because then there needs to be follow up. Because if in fact they don't support it, we want people to know they don't support a bill that will provide free college education for all New Yorkers. Let's be quite frank. It has to be very, very direct and clear. So you support it or you don't support it? And if you don't support it, why not? What can we do to educate those individuals to say yes, based on what my colleague has said, or based on what you've said, based on the meetings that I had, or based on the 150 phone calls my office received, or the demonstrations at my office, I'm on it now. You know what I mean? Because it's pressure if in fact they're not willing to do that. And so that's what has to happen. Look at the campaign for fiscal equity. Look how long that took. Look at it, we're still fighting for it right now. And what's holding it up? The governor. Let me just be quite frank. The governor is holding that up. Look at the funding for education right now. The governor is holding up 20% around the state of New York, $5 billion, and our children can't receive the type of minimum education that is required under the state constitution. Come on, that's exactly what it is. And do not be afraid to call it out. Because if we are afraid to call it out, and we're afraid to fight for our children so they can get the type of education to be the type of people that we want them to be. So that's what has to be done. Let me stop raising my voice.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate and welcome the passion. Assemblymember Gottfried, your comments?
Yeah, I think one important step is to make a fairly big strategic decision, and that is to broaden the movement to include the state university. You're leaving out a huge chunk of the state legislature for support if you're only talking about the city university. And when I say only, I don't mean to diminish it. It's just you're leaving out the bulk of the state. And I think the needs and the case are the same for both the state university and the city university. It's different flavors of the same issue. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is you need to get to a point where legislators think of public higher education as a compelling issue the same way we think about elementary and secondary education. Just about every legislator, when they think about the budget, probably the first issue they think about, unless they're me, because as health chair, I think about Medicaid, they think about school aid, and they mean elementary and secondary. And that's because they hear about that from a whole slew of their constituents all the time. And we need to achieve that with this proposition. And that means getting all the individual constituents who are interested in this issue riled up about it and riling up their legislators, whether it's students or former students or the parents of students or faculty. And you've also got to get a lot of the labor movement making a very high item on their agenda.
Assemblymember, I'm sorry to have cut off the last part that you were saying, but we appreciate your words, and we certainly need to close. So I want to thank everyone for having joined us, not only the advocates, but as well as our elected officials. And Andrea, your closing remarks?
Thanks. Well, it's clear that to save CUNY, we need mass support from the CUNY community and beyond. This is only the beginning of this campaign. We will not see success without this kind of coalition work. Bring in everyone you know who cares about quality public higher education. Other organizations are welcome to join the CUNY Rising Alliance. And I would like everyone to go to the CUNY Rising Alliance website, cunyrisingalliance.org, to sign a letter in support of the New Deal for CUNY. You'll find more information on the legislation there as well. So on behalf of CUNY Rising Alliance and PSC, thank you all for being here and for all the work you do. See you later.